Guess who's back for another episode of the College Football Show, presented by the Regular Usual. That's right, you guessed it, it's me, your host, Jordan Nash. Back again for Week 7, after a very successful Week 6. For those of you the first time listening to the podcast, each and every week I break down X amount of games and kind of give my thoughts on them. I place all my bets. You can follow along and track them at theregularUsual.com. I do a whole little spreadsheet. You can see how much money I gained, how much money I lost, and my overall record to date. This week's episode is going to be a little bit shorter than some of the previous ones, namely because it's a short week for me. Why? It's nothing to hide. Your boy's going to be on a motherfucking airplane heading off to Vegas tomorrow night. Technically it's Thursday morning, but I'm leaving tomorrow night, so typically Wednesdays when I record, I'm not going to be able to because I'll be in a car ride and in a hotel, and I'm not bringing my computer or any other shit because why would I? That being said, this week we're going to do, I think I've got 6 games to break down, so it'll be a quicker than normal episode. If you like the video version, of course you can always find that, The Regular Usual, on YouTube. Just type in The Regular Usual, College Football Show, it should be the first result, and please subscribe. Maybe because you don't necessarily need to, but it strokes my ego, it makes me feel good. It makes me know that people are listening, help me up the views. We're barely breaking double digits on some videos, the downloads are doing a little bit better. And of course you can find the podcast, which you already did, on iTunes under The Regular Usual. I'm going to be releasing a couple of, or republishing some of my older episodes where it's not college football focused this week while I'm gone, just to kind of get people who aren't all in on college football to get in on me. Because if you don't have a connection with the host, why would you listen? Even if you don't care about college football, at least you'll there might be something you can kind of jump in on. This week, again, because of how well last week was, we went back to the beer, little Sierra Nevada tumbler, Autumn Brown Ale. I don't know. It's fucking fabulous. In addition to the beer, we also got some grinds. What are grinds, you ask? It is an alternative to dips. So if you're a Grizzly or Copenhagen dipper, Jeremy, these are for you. You need to get on this train and tuck one in. Yeah, those of you who are heavy dippers probably didn't approve of the way I put that in, but I like it, and it makes me feel cool without harming my body. So, those of you on the video, it's grinds. It's probably going to be in reverse, but you can find them. I purchased them off Amazon. I'll put a link to them in my bio or in the show notes so that you can give them a shot yourself and see what you think. Last week, Week 6, doing a quick recap, we went 6-4, bringing the overall total to 34-26, and we gained a little bit more in the share of wallet or the bankroll, whichever you want to refer to it as. Gained 581, bringing the total to 184.38. The losses, we'll go through those really quickly. Starting out not too great, we picked Houston last Thursday night to cover 18 points against Tulsa. They won by 15, so that was an L there. The next up, another loss we had was LSU, 3-point favorites against Florida. We took the Tigers, and unfortunately they did not cover. They actually lost to the Gators 27-19. Auburn and Mississippi State. This one blew my mind. Auburn was a 4-point favorite in this game, and they got housed 23-9. I have no idea what's going on in Death Valley and Auburn side of things. Gus Malzahn, the head coach, from what I've read, of course I didn't watch the game, was people expected Jarrett Stidham to be a little bit more ahead of where he is when it comes to making decisions with the ball. And the Auburn offense should really be clicking on all cylinders now. This is the second year it started, but it hasn't quite happened yet. I'm going to come back to Auburn because we're going to talk about their game later on for the Week 7 games I'm going to touch on. And then, of course, the Virginia Tech game. I picked Virginia Tech in the 6 points they were given at home against Notre Dame, and maybe Notre Dame is for real. So any of you who are actually ISIS, who I offended in last week's podcast, or if you check my Instagram, no apologies. Still, fuck Notre Dame. I don't care. Someone please beat these Irish fucks. I need it. I need it for my own personal benefits because don't like them. Not going to cheer for them. You shouldn't either. The big winner on the night, I have to touch on this, and I added it to my total because I touched on it very briefly, was the Khabib and Conor fight for the UFC 229. A lot of people were on Conor because you got some free money with it. I took Khabib. He was the favorite, of course. He ended up winning the third round. Everyone, of course, you should have seen some of the melee that broke out after the fight. We're not going to talk about that here, but what we will talk about is Derek Lewis, his post-fight interview, and just announced today, literally, it's 8:53 at night as I'm recording this. I think it was an hour and a half ago, around like 6:30ish or so, they finally announced Derek Lewis versus Daniel Cormier at UFC 230 in New York. So right straight for the heavyweight title. Straight off a fight at the beginning of the month. He's doing less than 30 days and taking on Daniel Cormier. I don't know how that's going to work out. That's a very, very quick turnaround, but you got to strike while the iron's hot. I get it. So shouts to Dana White for arranging that fight, and whenever that comes around, we're going to touch on that as well. In the shoe money section, we had a couple of good bets, and I recommend everyone to do this each and every week until it goes by on you. I was speaking with one of my coworkers, and he kind of made me think about this and take some of these bets. The two that I want to touch on are, everyone, of course, knows Alabama's going to win most games. The sneaky bets, though, the smarter bets, if you get in early, I took Alabama minus 7.5 for the first quarter, and they were up by 14 by the end of the first 15 minutes of the game. In addition, we also took Alabama minus 24 in the first half, and they were up 41-14. So if you can hammer those early lines for the Alabama games, because you see, I mean, it's Tua Tagliavola, whatever his last name is, he's barely even played the fourth quarter. So if you can get in those first half bets for Alabama, I think that's the move for you to help build your bankroll and kind of get comfortable gambling. And if you want to take any bets, place any of your own, head over to the link, head over to bravada.lv. There's going to be a link in the show notes also, and on the YouTube page at the very top, that's going to list where you can sign on. It's basically a referral bonus for me. So any money you put in, if you put in at least $100, I know I'll get $100 back to bet on. That's just great. I'm not going to withdraw the money at any time. That's just going to roll on. We can bet more, get a little more outlandish, and it'll make you more invested in games that you probably wouldn't watch otherwise. And if you're a real true player for real and want to get some real skin in the game, bang my fucking line this weekend. That's right. I want you to send a text to 813-856-9093. Just text me your name, the game you want to bet, and your Venmo or something. And I will place actual bets for you in Vegas at the sportsbook on Saturday. Whichever game, you front me the money, or I'll front the money if you're real about it, and I'll pay you out your winnings for you. So that offer's still on the table for any of you listeners, anybody you know, 813-856-9093. That's the hotline number. Please send all critiques, complaints, and criticisms to there so I can text you back gifts that don't make any sense. All right, while I'm recording tonight's episode, I did take some live bullets. If you didn't know, as fall kind of rolls around and the college football season continues on, there's always Tuesday night MACtion. What is MACtion? MACtion is where teams from the MAC conference, the Mid-Atlantic Conference, play on Tuesday nights. So a lot of these teams didn't play this past weekend, and the two who play tonight, you have Appalachian State at Arkansas State. Appalachian State, I don't even know if they're in the MAC. They might be. I know Arkansas State is. That game right there is 7.5-point favorites. I took Appalachian State. Why? Because they're one of the 5 remaining teams who is still undefeated against the spread for the year. Those other 4 teams, Washington State, Utah State, you know I love those Utah State Aggies, Florida International, and Georgia Southern. I'm not going to touch on this game, but I went on ahead and also fired off a bet on this one as well, as Georgia Southern as 17-point favorites against the Texas State Bobcats. Georgia Southern's undefeated so far on the season. They're also undefeated against the spread. That's why I'm going to keep riding them and Utah State for the majority of the year until they prove me wrong. But those are your 5 teams. Again, Washington State, Utah State, Appalachian State, FIU, and Georgia Southern. So if you just want to someone who's got great odds in their favor, those are the 5 teams you should bet on. Again, ease yourself in, bet a couple of bucks here and there. You'll really get the feel for, man, the anxiety that I just sat through with a tight butthole all weekend on the couch Saturday watching the Florida State-Miami game and trying to keep updates and place bets in commercial breaks on all these other teams. I know, I kind of fired off a lot of information in the first 10 minutes, There might be another 10 minutes left in the podcast, so I hope you're enjoying this. We're going to get into the actual action now for Week 7, starting out in the SEC, where you have unranked Tennessee taking on the number 21 Auburn Tigers. Auburn is going to come into this game as 15.5-point favorites. Again, we touched on Auburn, them getting absolutely starched last week into Mississippi State. I was surprised that they were this big of favorites, but it really kind of shows you how much ass Tennessee sucks. So, why do they suck? Well, you could say it's because they've had a little bit of a heavy, challenging schedule. Games against West Virginia, Florida, and Georgia. That's all 3 teams that are still ranked in the top 25. Their wins come against UTEP and I don't even know, East Tennessee State. And they barely put away UTEP, who is a group of 5 school. These other schools, they beat them by at least 20 points. Auburn, on the other hand, their only 2 losses are to LSU by 1 and then Mississippi State last weekend. I was surprised to see that. Again, 15.5 points for Auburn. I don't think they have it. Tennessee has 0-5 in its is 0-5 on the road for its last 5 games, where you have Auburn is 16-3 at home. So definitely all over Auburn to win this game. If you want, I definitely hit that money line for a almost guaranteed win. I never say fully guaranteed, but almost guaranteed. But I think the pick here, given how bad Auburn looked last weekend, is Tennessee plus 15.5. You might be able to get them at 16 depending on when you place your bet. But I'm taking Tennessee and the 15 points on the road at Auburn. They might get waxed, but there's a chance they don't get completely blown out. Next up, I think this is where game day is going to be, if I'm not mistaken. You have number 2 Georgia on the road at number 13 LSU. Georgia's going to come into this game as 7.5-point road favorites. So the Tigers are going to get 7.5, maybe 8 points at home, depending on when the bet is placed. LSU, of course, coming off I wouldn't say a devastating loss, but a loss to a better than expected Florida team last week. Georgia, on the other hand, has continued to roll all year long. Their last loss, of course, coming against Alabama in last year's national title game. Every other team they've played this year, they've beat, but they haven't really been tested since Week 1, where they play. Who did they play against Week 1? I should know this off the top of my head. Bear with me one moment. Okay, they are 6-0, but they've played who was ranked at the time, number 24 South Carolina. Georgia hasn't had anybody close to them yet, winning each game by almost 30 points every single time they've played. Missouri is probably the closest team to them. LSU, on the other hand, the nice win at Auburn, the win over Miami to start the year off, win over Ole Miss, and then, of course, a loss to Florida. Getting 7.5 points, that's a lot of points to give up in an SEC game, especially when both teams are ranked in the top 15. I mean, who knows? I haven't really watched Georgia play much this year. They could be keeping the playbook pretty vanilla for Jake Fromm at quarterback, and they haven't really had a need to open it up. LSU has everyone seems to be offer. They have a tremendous defense, but the offense is mistake-prone, but they do have a decent quarterback in Jake Burrow who can kind of bail them out of situations, but they really rely on Nick Brossette, their running back. He's gotten his yards each and every week. He's going to break off 1 or 2 runs at minimum, but LSU hasn't played anybody as good as Georgia. This is one of the hardest games for me to pick because it's a full touchdown and probably going to be going down to 6.5 by the time I get this bet in, but because of how good Georgia is, I'm pulling for LSU. I want chaos. I don't want all these teams in the West. I need somebody to challenge Alabama, but I don't think there's anybody who can. And I'm always for Team Chaos. I want LSU to win, but I think the smart money is to take Georgia in this one. If you can get them at -7, that might be the move. It might be a close loss for you, but you'll see you get that action, that tight butthole that I experienced this past weekend for yourself. Except we're going to be leaving the SEC and heading out to the Pac-12, where you have number 7 Washington taking on number 17 Oregon. Oregon's going to be 3-point home underdogs in this one, which isn't surprising. Washington, of course, top 10 team. Their only loss coming to the aforementioned Auburn team to start off the year, where they played in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken. Oregon, of course, would be an undefeated team if it wasn't for 2 weeks ago the horrible collapse in the second half against Stanford, where everything just fell apart. They were rolling that game and let Stanford crawl all the way back and beat them in overtime. Oregon, of course, beat number 24 California last week, and their offenses look tremendous, which is expected coming from an Oregon team since the Chip Kelly era. Justin Herbert, probably going to be the first quarterback taken in next year's draft, unless you maybe have Dwayne Haskins, who I don't know if he's draft eligible yet for Ohio State. But then you have Jake Brown on the other hand. Not going to do anything flashy. Kind of reminds me of Kellen Moore at Boise State, which makes sense because who used to be the coach of Boise State? Chris Peterson, who is also who's now the head coach of Washington. I always have faith in Chris Peterson. He's just a guy who, for whatever reason, he doesn't get the best recruits. He's building slowly by little Washington into a power out in the West, but he doesn't have the talent there yet, but he always has a wrinkle or two up his sleeve. But at the same time, Washington doesn't put away teams the way you expect a top 10 team would. They struggled against Arizona State. They beat the dog shit out of BYU. And then last week against a winless UCLA team, they barely won by a touchdown. So they're kind of up and down each and every week. However, they are a little bit better against the spread than Oregon is. Oregon is 1-4 against the spread against teams that they should definitely be blowing out, of course, other than Stanford or Cal. But this will be a game that really, if Oregon wins this one, it puts them in a three-way tie with Washington and Stanford in the Pac-12 North, if I'm not mistaken, and kind of in the driver's seat. So both these teams need this win. If Washington wins this one, it can almost secure them a shot in the Pac-12 title game that put them at 4-0 in the conference and 6-1 overall. I think Washington gets it done here. I'm going to take the Huskies -3 to win on the road. I don't want chaos here. I need a Pac-12 team in the college football playoff. I can't have two SEC teams. So SEC root for chaos, not so much for everyone else. Moving on to someone who hopes to reach the college football playoff by shaking up the system. They're going to need a lot of help, and they're going to have a big problem this weekend in Memphis. But I'm, of course, talking about my number 10 UCF Knights, who I'm a proud alumni to. UCF finally is ranked in the top 10 for the first time since ever? Yeah, I know, big shock. They may have actually finished the season. Actually, I think they finished in the top 25. When Blake Bortles last season with George O'Leary, when they beat Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl. I remember last week's podcast. I couldn't remember Baylor's quarterback's name. It was Bryce Love. It's not Bryce Love. Damn it, I did it again. I can't think of what his fucking name is. Fuck that guy. He's not there anymore. He's not doing anything with pros either. UCF, however, is doing things at the college football world and the pro level with some of the guys who were at last year's draft class. UCF coming to this game, putting their 18-game win streak on the line at Memphis. The line here is UCF -4.5. So they're not big favorites in this one, and I can understand why. Memphis, of course, hasn't beat UCF in 5 years, but each year it's always a close game, usually coming down to single-digit points. 0-5 in the last 5 matchups, but they're 4-1 against the spread at home versus UCF. So I think that is going to play into it, that home field advantage, taking on a top 10 team. How many other schools get to come in, or how many other ranked programs actually head into Memphis to play for a game? Not many. UCF, again, their offense is phenomenal, probably the best offense in college football, just the pace they score at, the points they score, and they're fun to watch. No one likes watching these SEC games like last week's, where it was a week before last, where it was Florida and Mississippi State, where they won 13-9 or something like that. That's boring. No one wants to see that shit. You want points, you want them fast. This game is guaranteed. The over-under on this one is 78. Low-key, I think the line might be a little high. I think the defense has come out to play a little bit more. So I would, if I had to bet money, I'd bet under 78, but this could be a shootout towards the end. This is kind of going to be for ACC glory. AAC, I'm sorry, not ACC. AAC glory, where you have UCF, USF, Houston and Memphis as four of the best teams in the conference. UCF needs this win to stay relevant and have a shot to hopefully crash the party this year. I'm all in on my Knights. I'm pulling for them with everything I have. We're going to take UCF -4.5. Hopefully they haven't missed a step and can continue to build on Scott Frost's success that he is no longer having at Nebraska, because they are still winless. Yeah, 0. You see that eye. Yeah, so that's what we're going to take in this one. Next up, you have number 15 Wisconsin taking on number 12 Michigan. Michigan's going to be 7.5-point favorites in this one, and this surprised me, mainly because Michigan doesn't look that great. They don't really have any solid wins on their resume. They beat a well-overmatched Nebraska team. They beat Maryland last week. They barely squeaked by Northwestern, and that's it. They lost to Notre Dame to start the year. So they played Notre Dame to start the year off, but those week 1 games are never really telling, because people are still going to use you, breaking in new starters. You can't really base much off that. But Michigan's just been steady sitting there, kind of idling in the background. Their defense has looked pretty good. Offensive play has definitely picked up with Shea Patterson at quarterback. On the other side of Wisconsin, the offense lives and dies by Jonathan Taylor, who's going to be the main workhorse in this one. However, you can have Alex Hornibrook as well, who doesn't make a lot of mistakes with the ball. I give the edge when it comes to quarterback play just for throwing to Wisconsin and running the ball to Wisconsin. But when you need the dynamic kind of like make something out of nothing, that's Shea Patterson all day for Michigan. It'll be hard for Wisconsin. Michigan's going to load the box of Wisconsin. They're going to make Wisconsin beat them with their arms. We know that about Jim Harbaugh. Fun fact, though, when it comes to stats, Wisconsin is, in the last 10 games, 8-1-1 against the spread against Michigan. That tells me enough right there. Wisconsin should win this game outright, if I'm going to be honest. I would sprinkle the motherfucking money line on this one and give me Wisconsin +8 all day in this game. I might actually be one of the games I might place some money on out of the sports books. Next up, and our final game. I know, it's so quick. We're less than 22 minutes in, and we're just making things happen. Number 19, Colorado taking on USC. USC 3-2, Colorado 5-0. USC still a 7-point favorite in this one, which is understandable. Another team who really hasn't been challenged, Colorado. But great against the spread, 4-1. USC has lost to two, well, at the time they were a top 10 team in Stanford, and then now number 9, Texas. JT Daniels is finally starting to grasp the offense in his first year as a starter. I haven't really watched Colorado play much, if I'm being honest. I know Steven Montez, the quarterback, he looked great against Nebraska. That's the only game I saw them in, and they blew Nebraska out of the water, winning that one 38. Or they didn't blow them out the water, but they looked damn good, winning 33-28. Nice win over Arizona State last week. This is going to be a well-coached team versus a coach who's kind of, sort of not bad, but not an elite coach. But you have elite athletes, so we know USC is going to have the athletic advantage here. I think that's one of the main reasons they're a 7-point favorite, on top of being in the Coliseum, 10:30 kickoff. This is your true degenerate hours if you live on the East Coast. This is that last game you try to sneak in there and get some juice on. This one is a hard one for me to pick, mainly because I have no clue what will happen. I haven't really paid attention to either one of these teams. When it comes down to it, though, USC isn't the team we thought they were. Colorado in an upset. Give me the Buffaloes +7. Might sprinkle the money line there as well. I know some of you Big Ten fans are probably... I keep touching my hair. I'm sorry if you're watching the video, but I keep seeing this little Superman curl keep falling down. Michigan State versus Penn State. And Michigan State wouldn't have got upset by Northwestern last week, which I called, by the way. They're getting 13.5 points at Penn State. Penn State, I can't believe that Penn State's a 13.5-point favorite, but this is a borderline rivalry game in conference. Usually comes down to something each and every year. It usually comes down to a pointer or a field goal touchdown each and every year. Not this year. Michigan State doesn't have, Mark D'Antonio's squad isn't quite what they have been in years past. Penn State wins this one with ease. They really turn it on in the second half and blow Michigan State out again. Finally, I just want to give shouts to my good friend Jeremy, who listens to the podcast and watches them on YouTube. I just want to say thank you for letting me beat that ass this weekend in a three bet parlay that him and I made for $150 plus some other items. If you follow me on Instagram, you kind of know what that bet was about. Basically, we bet the Texas game, the Texas Oklahoma, Miami Florida State, and the fight. The parameters were, if whoever goes 3-0, it'd be $150 plus an item of your choice. I'm getting new shoes. Jeremy was going to be getting I'll say it. I was going to buy him a fleshlight. If we went 2-1, we were going to cover. He's going with me on this trip. We'd be paying for the drinks, the first 2 drinks while we're out in Vegas. I don't know what type of shoes I want. I'm going to get something real nice, though, just to stick it to him because, Jeremy, I love you, but you fucking suck at betting. You should roll the dice or play cards when we're out there because if you're like, hey, we should play... No, stop. I don't even want you talking about sports betting because you're garbage. You can't bet, dude. You're horrible. Fucking give it up. I kind of talked him into it. He kind of got conned, but he wanted to make it interesting for himself. He did, and I took him to the goddamn cleaner. So, shouts to Jeremy. As for everyone else, that's it. That's the end of the episode. I'm going to try and do, in addition to releasing those podcasts, that the regular episodes that I release, I'm going to try to do a podcast with Jeremy and Jared tomorrow on the way down to kind of give the pre-Vegas vibe and the hungover ride back from on Sunday back in Fort Lauderdale. So stay tuned for that. Again, tell a friend, someone you know who wants to get into betting, or maybe make some of your own goddamn bets for yourself. Tell them to check out the regular usual on iTunes. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, j-325 on Twitter, jord.ash325 on Instagram. And show me some love, and maybe I'll do something. I'll shout you out on the next podcast. Until then, next Wednesday, y'all stay safe, make some money, and we will see you when we see you. Later.